Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
2 certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only 2 best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Hello.
Hey.
I'd like to start out reading a rating and a review.
Oh, please.
I can't read a rating, but I can read a review.
You can state the rating.
What's frustrating is that if anyone knows how to fix this, let me know. When I pull up Apple Podcasts, if the subject of the review is too long, I can't read the whole thing. It like trails off with a dot.
Find that either.
So the subject line is one podcast to rule them ... I'm assuming it's all, but it could have been funny at the end. Like there's a Lord of the Rings reference here.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Hilarious. That's her. Hilarious. Hilarious.
Oh, I like that.
Really like that. So Hillary maybe is
probably
where to take that.
Hillary, you can email us and let us know what your whole subject line was.
I mean, I really appreciate that. We are the podcast to rule them all. Agree.
Wow. There's a lot of podcasts out there.
I'm not
sure if I want that reign of responsibility to reign over all the podcasts, but I will take it.
I mean, I'm doing what I'm doing, and she thinks that, so I don't do anything extra.
Yeah, that's true.
This has been a summer of self-examination. I'm absolutely a different person than I was in March, and I got to be honest, through this podcast, Rachel and Kristen have played a huge role in that progress. They just get it in an incredibly specific way. They know the work it takes to be sensitive, honest, passionate, curious, to be everything you are in a world designed to wear you down and throw you away. Even more importantly, they have the training and experience to apply that knowledge to the lives of others. And on top of all that, they're just delightful to listen to. Thank you for this podcast and for the work you do.
That just gives me the warm fuzzies all over.
It's really one of the best compliments I could give you, Hillary, is that it sounds like I wrote that about myself to make it seem like we're great. And I didn't. And I am so happy that I would have written something about this, like pretentious about myself. But because it's coming from you, it's just really, it's just nothing but great.
Yeah, it's very, very flattering.
Wow. Well, I really like that. Thank you.
Also, I love that we've been so instrumental on her journey. That makes me feel
I'm proud of you, Hillary. I'm just assuming your name is Hillary, because otherwise, why would your username have Hillary in it? But my username has a totally different name in it, and I don't know where it came from. But I think I created it in like 2006, and I have no idea what it is. I think it might be a reference to like Laguna Beach or the hills or something. I mean, we're talking like
way back in the day.
We're talking like 18-year-old me. I have no idea where it came from. So actually, maybe her name's not Hillary. But either way, I'm proud of you for using this pandemic as an opportunity for personal development.
Seriously.
Because clearly you said since March, well, we know what happened then and what's happened since then. So I'm glad that you decided to use this very weird time to work on yourself and that you've made so many changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. All right, we're here with a brand new Dear Krachel.
We've got 3 new questions.
What if someone was brand new and they'd never ever heard a podcast episode and this was the first one they were listening to?
And they're like, what is Krachel? Is this a weird alien word?
Oh, that's not where I was going with that.
Well, I think maybe we should.
Oh, but
we haven't explained that in a long time.
It's not that hard. It's just a mashup of our names.
Yeah, it's our celebrity couple name, except that we're not a celebrity.
I'm sorry. Did you just not hear us say that we're the best podcast of all time? And that we reign supreme over all the others? Yeah, it's just a name that our friends started calling us a number of years ago.
It cracked them up, so we just started to own it.
Yes, it does sound like a very bad STD, one that has scabs.
Krachel.
Yeah. But I've owned it. And like, that's the thing. If you have something ugly, you can either shy away from it or you can just embrace it and like repurpose it and, you know, like take back your narrative. So that's us taking back.
You weren't
going to
describe that. What were you going to clarify for new people?
Oh, just what it is. And it's a listener advice segment. I always wanted to have an advice column. and decided, well, we can do that. Once a month, we take listener questions if you ever want to submit one. And every single show notes, I do not kid you, there's a link in every single episode of
Not just
this
every
podcast.
Dear Krachel episode, every episode.
Every episode, there is a link in the show notes to submit a question. Or if it's just easier, you can always just email us at contact@clarityonfire.com and you can submit a question. Just put like Dear Krachel somewhere in it. And I'll know what it is. So we collate them and read through them and pick the ones that we feel like are the most relevant to everybody or the most interesting or the ones that aren't the same question we've been asked 100 times. No shade if you are asking us a question we've answered 100 times. It's just you can't keep producing the same episode.
Keep listening to the
every
podcast
time.
and you'll hear the answer at some point.
So, okay, would you like to read our first question of the day?
Yes, this is from Alexandra. She says, Dear Krachel, your Imposter Syndrome episode from July came up for me at literally the perfect time. I've been in commercial real estate for 3.5 years now, and I consistently have bouts of imposter syndrome when it comes to my job. Just when I've hit my stride and I'm feeling good in my role, like I'm learning, growing, and creating value, something happens and I find myself taking 2 steps backward. I go through weeks of self-doubt, low self-confidence, and self-esteem, and keep asking myself if I'm really cut out for this type of work, or if I'll ever grow past the point that I'm at today. While I'm all about feedback and learning where I can improve, I can't help but notice a pattern of being treated differently than my colleagues. When does feedback stop being constructive? Am I an imposter and people are figuring it out? Or am I being pushed out? I like what I do, or at least I thought I did. Again, it's from Alexandra.
So if you hadn't started out this question with an admission of how much you resonate with being an imposter, I would have a slightly different answer to this question. But the thing is through the lens of knowing that you have imposter syndrome, it's hard for me to totally believe that you're the only one receiving negative feedback, or you're the only one, or like that you're the only one receiving, kind of feedback that seems negative or not constructive or whatever. I'm not saying you don't feel how you feel. Of course you feel how you feel.
It might
I'm
even
questioning
be true.
why you feel how you feel.
Yeah, it might even be true that you are being treated differently, but right now, through the lens you're looking at it,
it's hard to know.
We can't be sure, because that's one of the side effects of imposter syndrome is you feel uniquely inept.
Yes.
Which means you're looking out around you and seeing, it seems like everyone else has this figured out and I'm the imposter here.
Right.
So it's hard to read the situation accurately from that lens of imposter syndrome. So once we work through that a bit, you'll be able to look more clearly and see, am I actually being treated differently? But right now, I don't know if you can even answer that question completely accurately, because the low self-confidence is warping your view.
Yes. So I think what we need is some alternative stories for you to question. Like, okay, this is like the story you're telling yourself now is that I am uniquely receiving negative feedback, and it might be me, but it feels like there's something uniquely wrong with me and that maybe I'm being treated differently. And I like my job, but I don't really like this experience. That's totally fair. That's a valid interpretation, but there's not just one interpretation of this. So the lens that I would prefer you come at it with is, okay, let's pretend, like role play with yourself a little bit. Let's pretend like I am super confident and secure in myself. You don't have to believe it. You could just pretend it for a minute.
Or you could imagine someone who you know who is super confident.
Yeah.
And think about them as a role model.
If it's hard for you to imagine yourself like that. And then take specific feedback that you're receiving and run it through the filter of, if I were super confident, or if it were this friend that I have that's super confident, how would the interpretation change? Like, if I were super confident and someone was telling me or critiquing my work, would I take that personally? Or would I just be like, oh, okay, they are just providing some feedback to me. The case closed. Like, there might not be a personal trigger or an interpretation if you were really confident. So if you were really confident, however, and you received feedback and it does feel negative, like I'm super confident and someone tells me, I just don't like your work. okay, well, then maybe that person is just a bitch. Or maybe that person just doesn't know how to give good feedback, or maybe they're a bully. It's not like if you're confident, people aren't going to make nasty or mean or, negative comments to you. They might, but it's easier when you're confident to tell the difference between good feedback and bad because your insecurity isn't getting in the way of you seeing clearly.
Mm-hmm. You made a good point too, that the person or the people giving you feedback might be very, very well intending it to be constructive and helpful, but might not be that good at delivering feedback well. And so part of the misinterpretation might just be recognizing this person might be trying to help and isn't great at this kind of communication.
Yeah.
Not everyone is great at giving that in a way that is not instantly off-putting or getting you on the defensive, but they're not trying to do that. They just don't know better and they're trying to be helpful. So that's another potential story that you could consider here. I want you to consider what else could be true in this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
You are instantly jumping to the conclusion that this feedback means I'm not cut out for this type of work. I'm never going to be good enough. I'm an imposter here. Right. What else could be true?
I mean, you get the reality that you already believe is true. That's the thing. It's like you're confirming something you already believe to be true. But if you believe something different, would you see confirmation of that? I think yes.
Yes.
Also, I don't believe that other people aren't getting feedback. I'm not sure that you're not getting more than other people or that, I can't be sure. I don't know the situation that you're not being picked on. And I'm pretty confident that you don't know about all the feedback other people are getting because they're not necessarily disclosing that to you, or it might be happening privately. So how do you know? Why are you so sure that you're getting like nitpicked when other people aren't?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe there's a story of like, it's easy for me to know when I'm being nitpicked or when I'm getting picked on, but other people, maybe I'm not seeing it. And, or here's another good interpretation. Maybe because it's me, I'm taking feedback personally, but when I see it outside of myself, I don't even register it as negative feedback. And the other person internally might be having a very personal interpretation or trigger around that thing. And you're like on the outside because it's not relevant to you. It doesn't bother you. And so you don't register it as negative feedback.
Yes, that's a good point.
Right.
Start paying attention to where is feedback happening around me that's not affecting me, that I might be not even putting in the same category.
You're not attuned to it because it's not relevant or personal to you. It doesn't push any of your buttons, but you don't know that it's not pushing another person's button.
Mm-hmm. One more thing is you can, if you know, like if you are genuinely open to feedback and you do want to grow and improve, you're allowed to ask for feedback to be delivered differently. They may not, your boss or whoever may not listen, but you're allowed to say, hey, look, I'm really open to feedback and I am much more motivated if we talk about it in this way. That's a perfectly valid thing that if you're caught up in imposter syndrome, you're not going to even think about that possibility because you're going to just try to hide the fact that you feel like an imposter and you're not going to want to bring it up. But feedback is a natural part of working. And so you can ask for the communication to be more productive and less destructive to your self-esteem. So that's another piece of this that you do have some control over.
Also, I want to answer her question directly about, am I an imposter and people are just figuring me out, or am I being pushed out? It's definitely not that you're an imposter and that people have figured you out.
No.
That's not the answer. It could be that you're in an environment that doesn't align with you and that it's not that you're not good at what you do. It's that you're not a good fit for the team or the organization and you're pushing other people's buttons. And so, yeah, they do give you more feedback or they do criticize you more or they might actively be pushing you out. I don't know that that's as likely as like, I'm just, taking this slightly the wrong way or that, it might not be a good fit, but like actively being pushed out versus like sort of passively being treated not great. I think that it's more likely that you're just being passively not treated great versus actively being pushed out. Like, I'm not sure it's conscious necessarily is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, but that might be an indication that it's just misaligned and it's not a good fit for you in the long term. Not that what you're doing is wrong. If you like what you do, please don't stop doing what you're doing because other people's feedback is getting to you. Like, it might just be a misalignment between you and those people and what you do is not the problem.
Mm-hmm. Before I move on to the next one, I want to normalize one piece of this, which is it's completely normal to go through periods at your job where you feel confident and like you've got it under control and things are going smoothly. And then to go through periods of doubt and growth and uncertainty and trying new things in a new way. It's a cyclical pattern of growth. And if you didn't have that cycle, you would stagnate very quickly. Growth is uncomfortable. Learning new things is uncomfortable. Doing something a different way is uncomfortable. And so it's only natural to go through those cycles. It means you're learning and growing.
Mm-hmm.
So don't feel like you're abnormal for having those experiences. To me, that just means there's growth and movement happening here.
And when does feedback stop being constructive? When it's not helping you grow.
And when it's truly just mean.
Well, sure, but like that's blunt and that's obvious. But the thing is, she can't tell the difference between mean feedback.
That's true.
So it stops being constructive when it's not helping you grow. I mean, that's the definition of constructive. And people's intentions have a lot to do with it. So you might have to get good at examining people's intention. Like, if I take their tone out of it, maybe if I take the way they're delivering it potentially out of it, that sometimes has a lot to do with it, sometimes not. Like, is their intent to help me and to help me grow? Maybe they're bungling the delivery. And is that something that I feel aligned with? And sometimes people want you to grow around something you don't think you need growth around or that you don't care about, which means, again, it might just be a misalignment.
Yep.
This is a hard question to answer because it's very contextual and, it would help if we had more information. But I hope that gives you some
starting places.
Various food for thought. All right. But next question. Dear Krachel, hey, hope you're both well. I'd love some advice about my relationship, or more specifically, my behavior in the relationship. I've been with a great guy for the past 9 months, but every time things are too good to be true, I self-sabotage and cause drama between us, and I'm not even sure why. How do I stop myself from doing this? It's pushing him away, and our relationship is starting to suffer. Thanks, Jess.
Jess, this is so normal, first of all.
It's very common.
It's so normal, in fact, that we did a whole podcast episode about this concept of hitting an upper limit and having an upper limit problem where things are starting to feel really good. And there's a part of you that fears, when is the other shoe going to drop? And you almost drop the shoe on top of yourself on purpose because waiting for it to drop is so uncomfortable. So I first want to direct you back to that episode. Rachel probably knows when it was. I don't.
I think it was June. I'm going to, at the end of this episode, we're going to list further listening and it'll be on there.
Okay. So there'll be a link.
Yeah.
So first of all, go listen to that because we do give some ideas for how to overcome upper limit problems and recognize them first and foremost when they're happening. I'm also getting the sense that there is, and I don't know enough about you, Jess, so I could be dead wrong here, but my sense is that you might have a pattern of having dysfunction in relationships to the point that has become comfortable.
Or if you've never, here's the thing. You might never have had a relationship, period. But if you grew up in a household that was really dysfunctional and you had parents who had a dysfunctional relationship, that's your norm. Mm-hmm. That's what you think is normal. That's what you're accustomed to. Even if you don't like it, it's what's comfortable. And it might just be where your set point is.
So when things are going well, that is actually your point of discomfort.
It's scary because it's
getting
unknown.
Back to drama and uncertainty and unhealthy relationship patterns. That's the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so a part of you wants to go back there because it's familiar. That might be happening too. That's a lot of where upper limit problems come from, is we get comfortable in chaos and uncertainty. And in a weird, warped way, we want to go back there.
Mm-hmm. Also, because sometimes we're trying to, and I think this is good because she's clearly moving past that, but a lot of the time when we end up in a relationship that's very dysfunctional and it's a mirror of a relationship from our childhood, what's happening is we're trying to heal old baggage with the people we can't actually talk to or heal it with because, the parents are usually like closed off. If they're dysfunctional, they're not going to be like open to change most of the time. So it's like you're trying to work out all of these issues with somebody else. And like, if I can change them, it's like I finally broke this pattern. Mm-hmm. And so there's a point to it. It's not just like, oh, it feels normal to me. It feels familiar. That's valuable, but it's more than that. So I also want to say that what I would do if I were you is, at least for me, like if I have the impulse to do something or say something, it's very hard for me not to do it or say it. I just kind of have to act on it, which if you're in a dysfunctional like mindset at that moment is not healthy, because then you'll snap at someone or you'll be mean to someone or you'll sabotage, you'll push someone away, right? What I would do is you can act on it, but you have to say something different. Like you can follow your impulse, but you can't say or do the negative thing that you want to do. You can talk about how you want to do it. So you can say,
for example, if you feel like nitpicking because you guys are really happy and it feels uncomfortable and all of a sudden he's doing this little annoying thing and you just want to snap at him and like pick on that thing, instead of doing that and causing drama, you can say, I am feeling the impulse to snap at you for this dumb little thing, and I'm not going to do that because that's self-sabotaging, but I just needed to do something.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to do is tell you that I had the thought and then not act on the thought.
And honestly, he might not always be the right recipient for that.
That's true. It might be
because
someone
that
else.
in and of itself might trigger him. Like, why did you want to snap at me? Do you know what like, it's not always right. Like, I don't think it's appropriate for every single time for you to share that impulse with him. Because then it's basically just like you're being passive aggressive instead of outwardly aggressive.
Right. Yeah. You can call a friend and be like,
I'm not encouraging passive aggressiveness.
I feel like doing this, but I'm not going to.
Not going to, because it's not healthy. So you can act on the impulse without acting on the impulse is what I'm saying. Another thing I really want you to explore, and we're going to link to this episode too. Again, I'll read out a list at the end, is the 4 attachment styles. I think you've got some attachment issues, as most people do, that need to be worked through. And I just want you to know what you're struggling with right now. And this is just true of relationships between two people. Romantic relationships bring them out pretty heavily, but it's not about you and him. This is about you. It's shining a light on where you have some work to do on yourself. So this isn't about like him needing to do work, though he probably has work to do for himself. That's clear. I mean, everyone does. But this is shining a light on where do you just have work to do that isn't yet done, that you have a growth edge here. So I think that, exploring your attachment style is a good way to use this as a growth opportunity, because I'm thinking this doesn't really have anything to do with him. This has to do with you and probably the relationships you've had in your past and your parents. More than anything else, probably has a lot to do with the dynamics you learned in childhood. And so this is shining a light on the need to explore those dynamics.
Yes. And a tool of helping you grow into a new, healthier dynamic might be finding some different models of people who are in healthy relationships. And you can sometimes even have an idea in your mind and think, what would this person do? For example, I love Chip and Joanna Gaines' relationship. I think they're just the cutest.
Super
and they're
cute.
very communicative and they're teammates. And you can ask yourself, like, what would Joanna Gaines do here?
Probably not that.
Probably not what I feel like doing right here. And so I want to model a different kind of relationship than what I saw growing up. So find some new healthy role models.
I want to add one last thing, which is that, and I think this is very related to attachment styles, which is why I want you to explore that. But I don't think it's just, hey, I'm trying to make this situation into one I'm actually familiar and more comfortable with, because that's part of it. Like, I'm trying to make this into something I'm comfortable with, because I'm actually uncomfortable with all of this unknown healthy stuff. But it might also be a little bit like testing him. If I push you, will you come back? This is a very anxious avoidant attachment thing, and I do know a thing or two about that. If I lash out, will you stay? Will you still want to be around me if I'm slightly mean to you or if I try to push you away? It's like, prove that you love me.
Yeah. How much do you love me? How bad can I be and you stick around, essentially?
Yeah. That's a very attachment style problem right there. So I want you to explore upper limit problems and attachment style.
I want to give you kudos for recognizing this pattern within yourself and
wanting to
reaching out
change
and wanting to, that shows so much self-awareness. And that right there tells me you are on your way to a really healthy relationship because you want to be and you are committed to doing what it takes. So huge kudos for that. Okay. Third question. Dear Krachel, I am terrible at time management and want to get better at it. I'm about to start a new job and I'm worried it's going to take a lot out of me and then I'm going to fail because I can't keep up or because I'm too scattered. I don't know if it's because I idealize what I can get done and overcommit, but then do nothing because it's overwhelming and try to do everything I want to do or what. I've always had an issue with this. I've tried being really structured, like drill sergeant level with myself, but that doesn't seem to work. I've tried time management apps and planner systems. Nope. Am I doomed to just be bad at this forever? This is from Bailey.
No, you're not doomed to be bad at it forever, though it might just be a slight Achilles heel for you and that it might be harder. It might be like one of the things that you're just, destined to learn and to practice in this life. Everyone has their Achilles heel. This just might be one of yours. Okay. So no, it's not that desperate. Like you don't have to just accept that this is the way it is.
No. I think there are things that are going to be more of a practice for some people. I will fully admit this is one of the areas that I have to keep practicing.
Yeah, Kristen's not good at this.
I'm not great at this. This is a constant growth edge for me as well. What I have learned is that, at least for me, and I think for most people, it's not really about time management, which is why the planner systems don't work, which is why the apps don't work.
Well, they work for people who are already good at it. That's the thing. It's like if you like planners, then you're not going to meet a lot of people who are very bad at time management for whom a planner system just changes their whole life.
Right. A planner's not a crutch. A planner is just a tool.
Yeah.
And if you're bad at using time management tools, that's not going to help solve the problem.
No.
This is really much more about energy management than time.
I want you to stop thinking. I want everybody to stop thinking of it as time management and start thinking about it as energy management. Because when you can tend to your energy, like truly how recharged you are, how refueled you are, if you can tend to your needs as a person, getting things done becomes a lot easier. And the problem is that we treat ourselves like productivity machines and we put expectations on ourselves that are unreasonable and we don't look at ourselves as a holistic system and we don't tend to that system. And so then when we can't produce, we're like, what gives? Why am I so bad at this? It's like, well, your energy is maybe spilling out everywhere and you've got 10 different energy leaks. And so you're never going to be good at managing your time and getting things done if you never have enough energy to do it, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to feel drained all the time, though you very well might feel very drained. It might just be that you feel scattered or you feel confused or you feel overwhelmed, which is not always the same thing as feeling drained, but it does highlight it's still an energy problem.
I'm very, very familiar with that scattered energy feeling.
Right.
And I know what happens when you sit down and try to focus or try to work on something when you feel scattered like that. It's not that you don't have enough time. It's that the time that you do have is not productive because you're overwhelmed. Your energy's all over the place. And if you had tended to your energy first, that time you could do what you need to do in that time and then move on to something else.
I remember one time when you were struggling with this, which was like one of 800 times I've seen you struggle with this.
At least 800.
I mean, like separate conversations we've had around this, at least 800. I was like, well, what are you doing all day? And you were like, I think I'm like checking things. Do you remember saying that? And I was like, what are you checking? Like, well, I'm like checking our comments and I'm checking our analytics and I'm checking the inbox.
Right.
But you're not actually doing it. You're just like tabbing back and forth and you're like, I'm checking this, I'm checking that.
That's what happens when I get scattered energy is I just think through all the things and check on the things and nothing happens. So if I get my energy in check, I can just sit down and do a thing and then do the next thing and then do the next thing. And then the things are done. So
we need to talk about how to get your energy in check.
This is funny because literally just this morning, I did an energy inventory of myself.
Yeah, Kristen didn't know that this question was going to be on the list.
I did not. And then I was like, wow, this is helpful timing. Yeah, Rachel collated them and showed me after I had already done this for myself. So it's not a hard thing to do. You need to start to come up with a bit of a playbook for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing you need to do is do an audit of what drains my energy and what replenishes my energy.
And drains doesn't have to feel like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. That is very well part of it, but it could be what's making me feel scatterbrained, what's
distracted,
what's like
overwhelmed,
pulling on my energy, right? What's like asking a lot of me, right?
Yeah, it's more like energy out, energy in.
Yeah, right. So where's my energy going out and where does it come back in?
Yes. So when you start to see these things pull on my energy and these things replenish my energy,
right?
All of a sudden you can start seeing where holes need to be plugged up, which sometimes means you schedule a time to think about that thing. Like if you have a thought that's just going in your brain of, I need to figure this out, or when am I going to do this, or how am I going to do this? Put on the calendar, I'm going to think about this and figure it out in 2 days. That's not an energy drain now. It's something that you're going to do in the future. That helps me a lot. So you need to plug up energy holes and add more things in that are going to replenish your energy so that when you sit down to do things, you have the reserves, you have the ability to focus.
Yeah.
It's good parenting of yourself. That's what this boils down to.
That's what I've been working with one of my clients on, because she also very much resonates with I've tried the drill sergeant way of managing myself and it just doesn't work.
It is not sustainable.
I'm like, yeah, you're going to rebel. And so you have to think of this from a place of parenting yourself. So if you have a kid, what is that kid like? What do they need? For her, she's a highly sensitive person. She's a lot of big feelings. And she's like, if she doesn't want to do something, she's not going to do it. If she doesn't feel like it, she's not going to do it. But she wants to get over the I have to do things just because if I don't feel like it, that I don't have the luxury of always doing something when I feel like it. So then how do you get someone like that to do something without them throwing a tantrum or rebelling? Is you have to be very good at managing that child. So you're thinking about it as like you're parenting yourself, that child's energy. So what does someone who's really highly sensitive need? They need a lot of sleep. They need a bedtime. They need healthy meals. They need to move. They need to exercise. They need outlets for self-expression and creativity. They need breaks. And so if you think about it as if I were tasked with parenting a child who was wired the way that I'm wired, what do I need in order to thrive? And then it's not about setting up your day in what makes logical sense, right? Like we work from 9 to 11 and then we take a break. No, we set up our day in a way that makes sense for how we're wired and how our energy flows.
And part of that is recognizing your energy is not the same all day long. There are people who are morning people. And if I have a client right now, she's like, my most productive hours of the entire day are 6 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Okay.
But my day doesn't start till 9 a.m. So I'm like,
well,
let's do some things.
Figure out how to make it to start at 6, right?
Right.
Which might mean going to bed a lot earlier and having to rework the way you do evenings so that you can be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 6 a.m.
Versus my brother, he is the biggest night owl I have ever encountered. He's going to be the most productive at midnight. Yeah. Don't expect anything from him before 11 a.m. It's just going to be...
I mean, I would
brain
say
is
noon.
Mush. Yeah, seriously.
Till the afternoon.
Till the afternoon. So you need to recognize your own natural energy flows and stop swimming up current. That's when you feel like you have to be a drill sergeant to try so hard to go against your natural wiring. Go with your natural wiring. It's going to be a lot smoother of a path, and you're not going to have to be so hard on yourself to make sure things happen.
Being a good parent to yourself is very much about tough love. No, I'm not going to let her stay up till 11 p.m. because I know she'll be a wreck tomorrow if she does. And I don't care that she wants to do that. Mm-hmm. I know that she's not going to thrive if I let her do that. Same with, no, I'm not going to let her have ice cream and gummy worms for dinner. Mm-hmm. She will not thrive with that. I don't care that she doesn't feel like it. She's not going to thrive. But it can't be so rigid that it's like you become a tiger mom with yourself.
Right.
And you're like, you do this then, and then we go here, and then I don't care how you feel about it. No, that's the best way to produce a very rebellious or suppressed or rage-filled, resentful kid who hates you and who doesn't want to listen to anything you say and then just doesn't do anything because you've been too rigid. So you have to care about how the kid feels, and you have to not care about how the kid feels, right? We have to kind of balance it. Like, I'm here to advocate for what's in your highest interest, not necessarily what you feel or don't feel like doing.
In that moment.
And I'm going to be human with you. I'm going to let you be a messy person. I'm going to let you take breaks. And if it's like, it's just not happening today, then fine. That's fine. We'll rework the schedule and we can make it happen tomorrow. And like, let's just let you go with how your energy is flowing today and we can rework it. But it requires you to be really kind of on top of yourself in a different way. Instead of in a drill sergeant way, it requires you to be very attuned to your own needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are certain people like Kristen, maybe like you, who need that lesson. And that's why they struggle with this.
Mm-hmm.
It's because Kristen, just theorizing here, as a type 9, kind of came into the world not having needs or having them, but not wanting to express them and wanting to downplay them.
Yeah, I was going to say, everyone has needs. Nines just pretend like they don't have
They
any.
don't pretend like they don't have needs, and they're just going to be easy, and they're going to be accommodating, and it's going to be about everybody else, and like, don't look at me. And I think having issues with the time and energy management is a way of, you have to focus on yourself. Like, you can't get out of your own body and out of your own experience, because when you do, you're scattered and you can't get anything done. It really forces you to come back to yourself over and over and over again. And there's some people who don't need to struggle with that because they're like, I'm me. I've been me. Hello, me. I don't struggle with time management or energy management most of the time because like, I don't need that lesson. I already know who I am. And like, I am very clear about expressing my needs and my boundaries and my wants and my dislikes and everything. So not that those things always go together, but I see this, there's like a deeper spiritual kind of lesson here in why you might struggle with that as a person and what value there might be in that's kind of your thing that you work on, perpetually work on.
Well, and I don't know if that's Bailey's challenge or not, but when you think of it through that lens, it almost is like, oh, okay, this is not my Achilles heel. This is almost like my helpful reminder to come back to what's really true and come back to myself, which is actually helpful sometimes to have something to keep reminding you to stay on the, healthy,
energetic
path. So you can view it that way. You can view it almost like when you start to feel scattered, that's you bumping. I'm not a bowler, but like in the bowling lanes, when you have those little buffers in the gutters.
Bumpers.
Yeah. You like bump up against them. It's like, oh, right. That's right. Okay. Need to straighten back out and just pay more attention to my own needs. Yeah. You can think of it as a helpful reminder and not as like, I'm spinning out of control.
Right. And I'm the worst and I'm never going to get, and then we tell ourselves all sorts of like inner critic stories about why we suck at it and why it's personal. It's not personal. It's just something you struggle with. And it's there to kind of help you come back to yourself.
But
that's
the
not
things
a bad
you struggle
thing.
with are also the areas of your biggest growth and potential.
Sure. So here's some episodes based on what we've just shared. So the first one, these are all kind of, I put them in chronological order from oldest to newest, but they're related to different questions that came up in this episode. So the first is navigating a toxic workplace with our friend Stacey Campisi. That was from February 2019, so about a year and a half ago. I brought that up because I wanted Alexandra from our first question to be able to get clear on, okay, am I in a toxic workplace where I'm being like picked on and maybe it isn't all in my head and it's totally like them, not me? That might be helpful to like just get a clear read on, all right, am I actually getting constructive feedback or am I just getting feedback from negative people?
Yep. Then we also want you guys to check out a side chat we did in October 2019. We already mentioned this one. This was about the 4 attachment styles. This one's particularly for Jess to examine what attachment style might be causing this dynamic in her relationship. But I think everyone could
need to know about it.
Revisiting this concept.
It's relevant to 100% of humanity.
Yep.
And then a Magic 8 Ball, masculine versus feminine energy from March 2020, talking about energy management. I really, really encourage Bailey and anyone who struggles with time and energy management to listen to this, because oftentimes what's happening is they're trying to work in a way that's overly masculine and they have more feminine energy. At least the people we work with tend to sort of have that problem, and they might not have even heard of that dynamic before.
Yep.
And so it might be that you need to work less in a masculine way and more in a feminine way. And all of a sudden your energy and time management will get a lot easier because you're going with kind of your innate preference.
That has made a huge difference for me, I have to say. We also want to direct you to a side chat we did in June, just a couple months ago. The dread of good things. This one's also for Jess. This was about the upper limit problems.
This is upper limit problems. Yes. And then because Alexandra mentioned it, the side chat from last month, July, about overcoming imposter syndrome. Actually, it was a Magic 8 Ball, but we brought it back. And so we republished it in July 2020. It was actually 2 years ago, but you can go back and listen to that one if you didn't catch that one.
Yeah, lots of further listening.
I had even more ideas, but I just decided to cut it off at this point.
At some point, it's like, just listen to all the podcast episodes. No big deal.
Just, why aren't you listening to all of them? Clearly, Hillary is, because she thinks we rule, to bring it back full circle. Okay, we will see you. When will we see you again?
On Tuesday, I believe, with another Magic 8 Ball.
You are correct. Okay.
See you then.
Bye.